Christmas Eve, 1945. In the bone-chilling cold of a quiet town in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a house erupts in flames, devouring everything in its path. By sunrise, 5 of the Sodder children are gone without a trace. No remains, no evidence, no explanation. Was it an accident or a carefully orchestrated cover-up? A strange phone call at midnight, rescue equipment mysteriously disabled, witnesses claiming they saw the children alive. Over 70 years later, the truth still lies buried beneath the ashes of that fateful night. This wasn't just a fire. This is one of the most chilling, unsolved family mysteries in American history. Now, we reopen the case of the Sodder children. On Christmas Eve of 1945, in the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, a horrifying tragedy unfolded that would shake the community to its core and leave behind a mystery that has endured for decades. The Sodder family, parents George and Jenny, along with their 9 children, were preparing to celebrate the holiday in their warm wooden home when disaster struck without warning. At around 1 a.m. on December 25th, as the family slept peacefully, a raging fire suddenly erupted in the house. The flames quickly consumed the wooden structure, engulfing the entire home in a sea of fire within minutes. In the chaos, George and Jenny managed to rescue only 4 of their children. The remaining 5, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, were trapped inside with no apparent way out and no signs of survival. Desperate to save them, George frantically tried to re-enter the house, but his efforts were thwarted in strange and inexplicable ways. The family's ladder, which was usually kept leaning against the house for emergencies, had mysteriously vanished. George attempted to break a window and climb up to the 2nd floor, but found no way to reach the roof. In a final act of desperation, he ran to his 2 trucks, intending to drive one close to the house and use it to climb. But neither of the vehicles would start, despite having worked perfectly the day before. Meanwhile, George and Jenny screamed for help and tried to contact the fire department, but their calls received no response. Incredibly, it wasn't until 8 a.m., more than 7 hours after the fire began, that the firefighters arrived on the scene. By that time, the house had already been reduced to smoldering ashes and rubble. What truly turned this tragedy into a lingering mystery, however, was what the fire didn't leave behind. There were no bones, no physical remains, and no trace of the 5 children presumed to have died inside. In a fire as intense as this one, investigators would normally expect to find at least fragments of bone or the unmistakable smell of burned flesh. But here, there was nothing. No ashes, no odor, no evidence at all that the children had perished in the blaze. Fire Chief F.J. Morris later claimed that the children's bodies had likely been completely incinerated, a theory that many experts dismissed, arguing that a typical house fire cannot reach the necessary temperatures to completely destroy human bone. Though the official investigation concluded the fire was caused by faulty wiring, the Sodder family rejected this explanation. They believed the fire had been intentionally set, possibly as part of a plot to abduct their children. Thus began one of the most haunting and enduring mysteries in American history. From the very beginning, the official cause of the fire was attributed to faulty wiring. However, this conclusion was immediately questioned. George Sodder had hired an electrician not long before the incident to inspect the house's electrical system, and the results showed everything was in perfect condition, no signs of damage or fire hazards. Furthermore, after the fire broke out, the family noticed the house lights were still on, something that wouldn't have happened with an electrical short, since a short circuit would have tripped the fuse box instantly. Another bizarre detail occurred around 12:30 a.m., just half an hour before the fire. Jenny Sodder received a strange phone call from a woman laughing and asking for someone the family didn't know. When Jenny said it was a wrong number, the caller laughed mockingly and hung up. This unsettling call seemed to foreshadow the bizarre events that were about to unfold. Afterward, Jenny noticed several odd things. The curtains, normally drawn at night, were open, the house lights were still on, and the front door was unlocked, which went against the family's nightly routine. She also recalled hearing a loud thud on the roof just before smoke began to fill the house. As the family began to piece together the sequence of events, more anomalies surfaced. The telephone line wasn't burned through. It had been cut, as confirmed by utility workers, further undermining the electrical fire theory. The family ladder, typically kept by the side of the house, had vanished. It was later discovered hidden in a bush far from the home. George's 2 trucks, both in working order the day before, mysteriously wouldn't start when he tried to use them to reach the upper floors. Even the only water barrel on the property, which could have helped douse the flames, was frozen solid, rendering it useless. Unable to accept that her children had been incinerated without a trace, Jenny began conducting her own experiments. She burned animal bones, chicken, beef, and pork, under intense fire conditions, yet they always left bone fragments behind. Her suspicions were further supported by crematorium workers, who explained that completely reducing human bones to ash required extremely high temperatures sustained over long periods, something not achievable in an ordinary house fire. Adding to the mystery, an unusual object was discovered in the yard, a device resembling a grenade or explosive. Some believed it could have been a homemade napalm bomb or another flammable device used to start the fire intentionally. This discovery only strengthened the theory that the blaze was not accidental, but a deliberate act of arson. Taken together, the strange phone call, cut phone lines, missing ladder, disabled vehicles, frozen water, and suspicious explosive device, it became increasingly difficult to chalk everything up to coincidence. These signs pointed toward a calculated plan behind the inferno. The Sodder family believed their children did not perish in the flames, but were abducted under the cover of night while the town slept peacefully on Christmas. Suspicions of a broader conspiracy targeting the Sodder family grew even stronger as more questionable details emerged. Before the fire, one of George Sodder's sons reported seeing a strange man watching his younger siblings on their way to school, a chilling sign that the family may have been under surveillance. George himself, an Italian immigrant, had publicly criticized Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, a stance that alienated him from many in the local Italian-American community. His outspoken political beliefs may have made him enemies willing to go to extreme lengths. Perhaps most troubling was the role of a former employee named Nick. Following a heated argument with George, Nick had ominously warned that the Sodder family would pay for it. Strangely, Nick later served on the official committee that investigated the fire, raising serious concerns of a conflict of interest. Even more suspicious, Nick had increased the insured value of the Sodder home just before the fire, adding fuel to growing speculation that the blaze was not only deliberate, but premeditated. Together, these disturbing threads form the fabric of one of America's most chilling and unresolved mysteries. In the aftermath of the Sodder house fire on Christmas Eve 1945, what should have been a thorough and transparent investigation quickly turned into a frustrating and incomplete effort, riddled with negligence and inconsistencies. Rather than conducting a serious inquiry, local authorities failed to follow even the most basic investigative procedures. Crucial evidence was overlooked, key witness statements were poorly documented, and within days, the site of the fire was bulldozed, erasing the chance of any further forensic analysis. Desperate for answers, the Sodder family appealed to the FBI, hoping the federal agency would step in and uncover the truth behind their children's disappearance. but their hopes were quickly dashed. The FBI declined to take on the case, stating that it was a local matter and outside their jurisdiction, a decision that deeply disappointed the public and further disheartened the grieving family. Among the early suspects was a man named Lonnie Johnson, who admitted to cutting the family's phone lines and stealing their ladder on the night of the fire. While this raised suspicions, Johnson denied any involvement in arson or the disappearance of the 5 missing children. Despite the questionable nature of his confession, he was never prosecuted, nor was he subjected to any deeper investigation. In 1949, refusing to give up, the Sodders hired a private investigator and initiated an independent examination. They had the remains of the house's foundation excavated in hopes of finding evidence missed by the original investigation. 4 vertebrae fragments were discovered, briefly reviving hope that the children's remains had finally been found. However, analysis revealed that the bones showed no signs of exposure to fire, and the estimated age of the deceased did not match any of the 5 missing children. One of the most disturbing revelations came from Fayetteville's fire chief, F.J. Morris. He confessed to planting a beef liver at the scene, intending for the family to believe it was part of a child's burned remains. The deception was allegedly meant to ease their grief, but when the family requested to re-examine the liver, it had mysteriously vanished from the investigation office, deepening the mystery and fueling suspicions of a deliberate cover-up. These glaring investigative failures, ranging from mishandled evidence and unqualified conclusions to suspect manipulation, led many to believe that something far more sinister had occurred, and that powerful forces were determined to keep the truth buried. Though the official conclusion claimed that the 5 Sodder children had perished in the Christmas Eve fire of 1945, the family always believed otherwise. They were convinced their children were still alive and had been abducted. That belief wasn't just driven by parental intuition. It was reinforced by numerous reports and eyewitness accounts from the public, filled with strange and unexplainable details that carried heavy implications. Shortly after the fire, an employee at a roadside diner claimed to have seen 5 children matching the description of the missing Sodder kids. The children were seen being driven away in a car with Florida license plates, a detail that stood out to the family since Florida was far from their home in West Virginia. The children, reportedly calm and obedient, did not appear distressed, so the witness only grew suspicious after learning about the fire in the newspapers. Roughly a week later, a hotel clerk in Charleston, West Virginia, reported seeing 4 children resembling the Sodder kids accompanied by several Italian-speaking adults. These adults refused to let the clerk approach or speak to the children. Their guarded behavior and overly controlling demeanor stuck in the clerk's memory, and they later contacted the Sodder family after hearing their story. Then in 1967, one of the strangest incidents occurred. The Sodder family received a letter with no return address, postmarked from Kentucky. Enclosed was a photograph of a young man around the same age Louis Sodder, one of the missing children, would have been. On the back was a cryptic message: Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Illo boys, A90132 or 35. Although the source of the letter was never verified, the young man in the photo bore an uncanny resemblance to Louis, and the family was convinced it was him. These reports gave the Sodder family hope and continued to deepen the mystery surrounding what really happened that Christmas Eve. After the tragic Christmas Eve of 1945, the lives of the Sodder family were forever changed. Not only did George and Jenny Sodder live with the heartbreak of losing 5 children, but they also carried the constant torment of unanswered questions. What really happened to their children? Were they burned in their sleep, or were they kidnapped and vanished into the night? Unwilling to accept the official explanation, George and Jenny devoted years to searching for the truth. They put up a massive billboard along a highway, featuring pictures of the missing children and a heartfelt plea for information. The family offered a $5,000 reward, a significant sum at the time, for any credible lead about their children's fate. The billboard became a symbol of unwavering hope and determination, remaining in place for decades after the fire. Every lead, no matter how small or far-fetched, was pursued. George and Jenny traveled based on tips from strangers, searched unmarked graveyards, followed up on rumors, and even sent their children's photos to self-proclaimed psychics. But despite their relentless efforts, all paths led to dead ends. In 1967, after receiving the photo of a man resembling Louis Sodder, the family hired a private investigator to go to Kentucky and look into the lead. But in a chilling twist, the detective disappeared without a trace after starting the investigation. The family never heard from him again, adding yet another bizarre and unsettling layer to the mystery. Decades have passed, but the fate of the 5 Sodder children remains unsolved. The questions didn't die with George and Jenny, who carried their grief to the end of their lives. They still linger in the minds of the community and anyone who's come across this baffling case. It stands as one of the most haunting and enduring family mysteries in American history.